So you have now started building your decks in such a better way since you last saw Deck Driver's video on how to win more games. You start following mana curves better, you realize you can be a lot more flexible with the amount of cards you put in each category, and you start to realize that your synergy in your deck and how you play around your commander is a lot more important than what your commander actually is. And if you're anything like me and your mana curves are a lot better than they used to be, you might actually start asking your question about ramp. Is ramp really that necessary? If you have a clear game plan on turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you have enough lands in your deck, how much ramp is actually necessary if you already have a small enough mana curve? Well, I said if you're anything like me, but really, this is just a me thing. I'm not going to put any blame on you, the viewer, for maybe or maybe not thinking of this question. And honestly, I want you to bear with me real quick because I have one of the most devious questions that I don't think you're ready for. I don't think in your 1 year of playing Magic to 20 years of playing Magic that you have ever encountered a question such as this. The question goes as follows. When playing at high levels, a strict mana curve and game plan around that mana curve is crucial. So turn 2 and 3 are very important. Since a card like Sol Ring gives you mana 2 turns in advance, does it not then disrupt your curve when you could actually be playing something better on turn 1 so that you can curve out normally? This is the question. Is Sol Ring bad? Now, before you go burn down my entire planet, before you go dox me and find where I live, before you go unsubscribe and dislike the video and call me a madman, I want you to hear me out. As we talked about, in following a more strict mana curve for your decks, you will realize that ramping kind of skips your turn. If you have a very clear game plan for turn 1 and you want to get out a small unblockable creature, and for turn 2 you want to get a valuable creature out that can help further your game plan, and turn 3 you want to get yet another valuable creature or enchantment that can further the game plan even more, and on turn 4 you want to cast your commander, then the godly turn that is turn 1 Sol Ring, turn 2 commander might actually not be as good. Because think about it. Now you have out your commander, but you don't have any of the synergy pieces that are supposed to come before the commander. Let's say I'm playing Strafan Mauer Progenitor. Typically on turn 1 and 2, I want to play something that can ping the entire table. This is so I can create 4 blood tokens a turn cycle. Then on turn 3, hopefully I can play something like a really good artifact or a really nice vampire that can help Strafan live or help Strafan do a better job. But if instead I play a mountain turn 1 and a Sol Ring, and on turn 2 I play a swamp, now look at my situation. I have 2 lands, a Sol Ring, and a commander. From the entire 4-person table perspective, I am now very far ahead. And I have a commander out with no protection. This is the easiest turn 2 go for the throw I've seen in my life. This is the easiest turn 2 path to exile I've seen on my life. This is the easiest turn 2 counterspell I've seen in my life. Casting your commander on turn 2. How much further ahead must you be? But not only that, not only do you look further ahead, you look further ahead while not actually being ahead at all. All you've done is simply cast your commander. But on turns 1 and 2, you were supposed to play value pieces that allow you to ping the entire table. Now going into turn 3, you have no way of doing that. You have no way of pinging down the entire table so you can make blood tokens, so you can put out big vampires. Instead, what you have is a commander that is going to do absolutely nothing for you. All because you played Sol Ring on turn 1 rather than Pulse Tracker. Now you might say that this is a niche situation for Sol Ring, and you could possibly be right. So I've tried to look at both sides of the argument, and I've come up with 2 distinct arguments for and against why Sol Ring might be bad, or might be just as good as we thought it was. So let's stay on track of why Sol Ring might be bad. As we said earlier, depending on your colors, your curve, and the cost of your commander, getting synergy pieces out first will help further your game plan more than a Sol Ring on turn 1. Just like we talked about with Strafan, you want those pingers before you play Strafan. Those pingers typically come on turn 1, turn 2, or turn 3. And Strafan should come out on turn 4 so you can immediately get blood tokens on your battlefield. If Strafan comes out any earlier than turn 3, in most cases you're not going to have this, and you will have a commander that does nothing. If your commander is less than 5 mana, Sol Ring becomes that much worse of a card. And if you have more than 3 colors, Sol Ring becomes that much worse of a card as well. Now again, Soul Ring is not a bad card necessarily. Soul Ring can be bad in situations. I'm never going to be delusional enough to say that Soul Ring is a bad card. The card quality is off the charts. That's like saying Dockside is bad because on turn 2 there might not be as many artifacts on the field as turn 5. That would be simply untrue to say. Dockside is a good card, a great card even, and so is Soul Ring. But when we get back to the level that we're kind of talking about, which is high power casual, let's now talk about why Soul Ring is a really good card. So yes, we can definitely talk about how turn 1 Mountain with Soul Ring and turn 2 Swamp with Strafon being played is a bad move. There also is just the same possibility of just having more flexibility. Think about this. With a Soul Ring, on turn 2, you can play 2 cards that you would normally play on a turn 2 because you have 2 extra mana. You could possibly play a turn 3 card and a turn 1 card on turn 2. And you can even, again, play a turn 4 card on turn 2. Let's say in that Strafon deck, you have that Soul Ring. In the 4 mana slot, it might be worth it to put something that can ping the table. Strafon wants you to ping stuff, and if you're gonna potentially have 4 mana on turn 2, it actually becomes a really good card. In most cases, you don't want to play cards that are the same mana value as your commander, because typically they will interrupt that mana curve. But if you have a Soul Ring in your deck, it just adds more flexibility to your game plan, as maybe 1 in 10 games you have a Soul Ring, and you'll be able to play more 4 mana cards on turn 2. Now, is that something you should game plan around? Probably not, as it might be 1 in 10 or sometimes 1 in 20. But it certainly is a possibility and can be teched for if you have enough space. But Soul Ring is good because of that flexibility it allows you. Again, 2 turn 2 cards on turn 2, a turn 3 and turn 1 on turn 2, and a turn 4 card on turn 2. Because of this, Soul Ring is a good card. Let's go back to playing Devil's Advocate one last time. Soul Ring is bad because you could play cards that are more valuable than it on turn 1. In fact, you might be able to find even more cards that are better than Ramp on turn 1 simply because of your strategy. Let's say you're playing something as aggressive as Infect. In almost every case, you want to play a 1 mana Infect creature or a 1 mana unblockable creature that can be given Infect or Toxic. In almost no way do you want to have a Soul Ring on turn 1. I believe that the more aggressive your deck is and the lower to the ground your deck is, the less you want a Soul Ring. You want to have those small unblockable creatures. You want to have those Infect creatures. You want to have those Toxic creatures. You want to have as many low to the ground creatures as you can so that as they get removed and as they get wiped, you can simply dump more down as you go. And a Soul Ring eventually will be a card on the cut list that you won't want because it takes up a slot, that could be used on a more valuable card. Now, if we're being more realistic and we're back to reality, how many decks is this actually going to be a thing? Not very many. Could you find decks? Could you find decks that it might be bad in? Yes. Are there decks in Commander that are low enough to the ground for Soul Ring to be bad? Absolutely. But how many of those decks are there? Not very many. The last thing I can talk about, and the last way of even trying to convince you that Soul Ring is a bad card, is the fact that it's kind of a win more card. Or because the quality is so high, it really should not be allowed in something like Commander on a casual level. Because you might want to argue with the fact that Soul Ring gives you that much flexibility. Soul Ring does put you 2 turns ahead in terms of mana. Soul Ring does make your life insanely easy in a game of Commander. Is it really that fair? And is it really that good? Because again, if your deck can only function or can only be flexible enough and focused enough when you're 2 turns ahead, is Soul Ring really that amazing? If Soul Ring changes your deck that much, if Soul Ring makes one game that much better than your other game, does it not then make it a bad card? If you have a 10% win rate with a deck, and those wins come from you getting a Soul Ring might not be the problem. Might be the rest of your deck, and Soul Ring might be a bad fit in that deck. Now, at the end of the day, though, these arguments are kind of fruitless. Soul Ring is a staple in Commander. It's in every single precon. It's in borderline every single deck. I don't think I've seen a deck not run a Soul Ring. Soul Ring's card quality matched with its insanely low price is unbeatable when it comes to deck building. If you could get something as good as Soul Ring for a cheap price of $1.50, of course you're gonna get it. If you could get a Mana Crypt at $10 a card, everyone would own a Mana Crypt. So I think the real thing is Soul Ring is a very, very good card. The real question is, when is it a good card, and when should you actually be playing it. I think it's a lot better to use your brain power and not just automatically assume that Soul Ring is going to be great, and to truly question in every deck, is this a Soul Ring deck or is it not? Engaging in hypotheticals like this is what makes you a better deck builder. So thank you guys all for watching. See you next time.